Hello and welcome. My name is Walter McGrory, and this is another episode of Call of the Runes. This episode will be a short primer on what the runes are, specifically the Elder Futhark runes, and how they were used. Well, there are different types of runes, and I will mention them shortly in this video. The series, as it goes on, will focus on the 24 Elder Futhark runes. So, let us begin. So, when you're watching this, you're wondering what the runes are. And when you've heard about the runes, you've heard a lot about the mystery. You've seen them maybe in Lord of the Rings. You've seen them used in magic and in TV shows all over. But what the runes primarily are, or were, is a form of writing. The name Elder Futhark comes from the first 6 runes in the set. Veu, Ulrus, Thorisas, which is a th sound that we no longer have in our alphabet, Anzus, Redo, and Kenas. These spell out together Futhark. This is just like our Western alphabet, which starts with alpha and beta, the A and the B, and is therefore called the alphabet. The oldest known complete Elder Futhark row is the Cliver stone, number G88. And what the G88 is, I will come back to in the video about runic amulets. And comes from Sweden and is dated to around the year 400. Now, this is the oldest complete set that has been found. Scientific consensus is that the Elder Futhark row is much older than 400 years, from the year 400, and was used from between the 2nd and the 8th century in Northern Europe. After that, the younger Futhark was developed. This slowly faded in from the 8th century and lasted until the 12th century. Around the 8th century, the Elder Futhark slowly went out and the younger Futhark slowly came in. The younger Futhark is a more simplified alphabet and only contains 16 runes, and because of that, it loses some of the sounds. Later on, around the 12th century, the medieval runes, or the Futhark, are starting to take over, which are called so because they're used during the medieval period, and also because instead of an A sound, there is an O sound, a Futhark instead of a Futhark. This is used from around the 12th century until the 7th century. Again, this series will focus mostly on the Elder Futhark, but other systems of runes have been used. The Elder Futhark consists of 3 Eyat. And an Eyat means a group of 8. Each Eyat contains, therefore, 8 different runes. And there's also a way that the runes were numbered. In Lothruner, or hidden runes, ciphers that were used in Scandinavia, the runes are sometimes hidden by the number that they were in their Eyat, and in which Eyat they were in. For instance, in the first Eyat, the first row of runes, the 3rd rune is Thorisas. So you could also write Thorisas as 1.3 or 1.3. There are several clever ways that this was done, and we'll get into those later. Another example, from the 2nd row, the 4th rune is Yera, so you could also write this as 2.4. Mythologically speaking, the runes are discovered by Odin. Odin hang from Yggdrasil, offering himself to gain the secret knowledge of the runes. And this kind of gives away what the runes mean culturally. They're not just a writing system, they're also surrounded by mystery. They're also surrounded by magic. They're something that Odin gained with great personal sacrifice. And in Havamal, he also ascribes some runic charms that he knows, which he can do magic with. And that is what we're going to say here. Besides using the runes as a writing system, the runes were also used in magic and possibly also used in divination in Scandinavia in the time that the Elder Futhark was used. However, the word rune means mystery. And that's a very apt name because very much has been lost. There is no definitive guide on what each rune meant and how this meaning came to be. nor how the runes were used exactly. So there's no consensus. What we do know is that each rune has at least a sound, like a letter has, and that each rune probably has a distinct meaning. This we can see in the rune poems, which we'll go back to in another video, and in amulets. So there's short poems, the rune poems, where each rune is described in a couple of verse lines, and there's some amulets where, for instance, a horse is depicted and just the rune meaning horse is also depicted. So we can know that the runes were used for their words and for their sounds. There is some disagreement within the scientific community if the runes also actually had a magical meaning. Personally, I think that it is very likely that this word meaning was also used magically. To make it clear, when I say it was unclear if the runes were used in magic, this is not to say that it was thought that the runes were never used in magic. Some scientists think, or some scholars think, that the runes were used in magic as a written system, as all written systems have been used in magic, but that the individual runes were not for their individual use, used for magic. So you could not inscribe a single rune on an item in order to give the power of that rune. Personally, I think it is likely that this was done, and I'll give an example for Hagelas. In object DR196U, that's a spear shaft, there is a line which says, I invoke Hagela, I invoke hail. This is written out in runes, so this is just a full line on the spear. But then there is also a shield buckle that is found. And on the inside of the shield buckle, the part that is not seen, it says, I challenge, and then just the Hagelas rune, just the H rune. It seems that Hagelas, and we'll go back when we get to the chapter on Hagelas, which is a very destructive force, was used both in spears as an attacking power, but also in this shield, and just as the single rune, to inscribe to it the magic to protect against Hagelas. So the power of Hagelas, or the symbol, what Hagelas symbolizes, is called upon in a single rune. For divination, there is not that much evidence. You would think so, because most of the books that are written about the runes are written about the runic divination. But the only clear evidence, or circumstantial evidence really, that we have about runes being used in divination comes from Tacitus. Tacitus describes that people in Scandinavia used to cut little strips from nut or fruit-bearing trees and inscribe symbols on these. They would then throw these symbols, or these strips with these symbols, onto a white cloth and randomly, without looking, select a couple. From this selection, they would do an augury, they would do a divination. What exactly was written on these wooden strips is never mentioned. But because the runes seem to have such a strong magical meaning, Odin used them, and Odin, when he gets them, not only is Odin known for divination and his future-telling abilities, but also the strong magical connection that there is to the runes, I think it is likely that it was the runes that were inscribed on these strips. We can never know this for sure, but I think it is likely enough that I will take divination as we go on in these videos. That is a short introduction of what the runes are. If you want to learn more, please continue watching, and I hope to see you next time.